Let's talk about that freaking Zelda Bridge video. Sometimes a game clip like this lights the internet on fire. Like in 2020, when we all freaked out over the incredibly realistic liquid shaders in Half-Life Alyx. Or in 2020, when we all freaked out over the incredibly realistic rope in The Last of Us 2. Did anything else happen that year? Can't remember. This May, the thing that had everyone talking was A Bridge in Tears of the Kingdom. A game that's not realistic, really at all, but nevertheless has some of the best and most complicated physics of any game I've ever played. This clip particularly impressed game developers because they understood, more than anyone, that getting something like this to work in a game is almost impossible. But why is that? Let's talk about video game physics. If you play games, you probably have an idea of what I mean when I say physics. But it's worth going over the fundamentals because, like most aspects of game development, the more you think about physics, the more complicated it gets and the more miraculous it seems. In games, anything that moves is basically either a canned animation or a physics object.
Canned animation is an animation that an animator put together specifically. It'll look the same every time, it'll do the same thing every time. It may be sped up or slowed down by something sort of design-wise, but in general, it's 100% predictable. You know what it's going to do every time.
The NPCs in the Bread Boys scene of BioShock Infinite? Canned animations.
Physics interaction is where, using the game engine or the real-time engine, we basically simulate real-world physics, or a version of real-world physics in the game itself.
So it covers things like collision, like movement, acceleration, even like character controls. That's all kind of the physics thing. A lot of it is trying to solve these very complex equations in a way that is both fast and does not cause a lot of error.
My name is Shayna Moon. I'm a professional video game producer.
I'm Cole Wardell. I am a software engineer.
Shane has been a producer for 7 years and worked on God of War and God of War Ragnarok, and Cole knows seemingly every programming language imaginable and also used to work on rockets, so I really feel like I've brought you the best of the best here. Anyway, game physics are tough because there's a lot of math going on here to make us believe that a digital rock is falling to the digital ground in a way that doesn't break our immersion.
The most naive way of doing something falling would be called the Euler approximation.
Euler's method.
That's ancient.
But it works.
Where you take something, and it's got a velocity and you have an acceleration. And you just add the acceleration to the velocity every step. But if your addition is a little bit off, or your acceleration is a little bit off, it gets further and further from like what the truth is. So like maybe the truth is it's down here and it's actually right here, and then it gets further behind.
So even something as simple to grasp as rock hit ground gets complicated pretty quickly.
So there's a lot of cool tricks like Verlet integration, which is a system that uses the previous position instead of the velocity, so that if you have a small error, that error doesn't compound. So you're just going to be a little bit behind or ahead of the truth instead of like continually getting further and further behind from the truth.
And figuring out when that object hits the ground is a whole other story. And the ground doesn't even move. When two moving objects collide, the amount of math involved it's more. So when it comes to certain physics interactions, developers simply cheat. In some FPS games, for example, bullets just don't exist as flying physics objects.
You draw a line between the two positions, and then you check to see if that line intersects any of the polygons, is the standard thing.
But most modern FPS games will have a mix of hit scan and physics projectiles. Certainly anytime there's a rocket these days, it's an actual physics object with mass and velocity. That means it's also subject to other forces like wind, gravity, and distance. It's also computationally expensive. Every physics object has your GPU or CPU running calculations so that you can experience a normal outcome and not this. Which brings us back to why Tears of the Kingdom is nuts. Tears of the Kingdom is an immersive sim where Link gets a set of powers, a few of which let him mess around with physics objects. The one we'll talk about today, though, is Ultra Hand. With Ultra Hand, Link can lift and fuse a huge variety of objects whose physics behaviors change once they're fused. Simple example, a wooden board on its own does nothing. A wooden board attached to a fan on the water will be blown forward by the air. And depending on where Link is standing on that board, his weight will influence the direction it travels. Fun fact, between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, Link's weight changed from 8.5 apples to 10. He's a 10-apple boy, but the interactions between objects can become so much more complex.
That's why, like, the tweet that I made that went viral, that's why I was just like, this is black magic.
In most games, something like this pulley system would be a canned animation, or the points where the chain attaches and its effects on the door would be faked in some other way.
But later on in that dungeon, you're given just wheels and the chains are hanging there and you have to build it yourself.
The reason this is so incredible goes back to what I was saying earlier about collisions between physics objects. A functional video game rope or chain isn't a continuous object. It's basically tons of segments, and when one of them moves, the others react. That can really easily create a chain reaction where the whole thing freaks out because every segment is reacting to every other segment's movement ad infinitum. That's why most games don't prioritize a rope collision.
Say this is like something tied to a chain. When it's bumping around and hitting things, it's mostly this weight at the end that actually matters. So most of the time you just shortcut it by saying the chain doesn't collide with anything. If it clips through the wall, who cares? It's only for a few frames. But the fact that it was able to use the chain to support the wheel and the torque of like the piece moving to pull it up, you're taking multiple directions of force and you're transforming them. This wheel is trying to rotate, which means it's pulling this way, which means it's pulling on the chain that way, and then the chain is transforming that into a pull this way, and it's like, I could not just tell you the steps involved for that off the top of my head. That's something I would have to work out, and I, took a degree in physics.
And as Cole pointed out, the developer's hands are incredibly visible here, because guess what? The ropes on your horse cart don't have collision on them. Nobody cares if that's clipping through objects. And the chain also isn't available as a Zonai device to take out of this shrine and into the rest of the world. It's just too complicated to use outside of this curated scenario.
The reason the door impressed me so much is it felt like the programmers had extra time and were just flexing on the people that knew what was going on. It almost felt like a little nod from the developers to people who work on game engines going, yeah, this thing's pretty cool. We can do some great stuff. It's this stable.
That also ties back, to why the bridge over the lava is so impressive.
That bridge and the chain are really the same thing. Like, the same kind of thing. Because if you think about it, all of them are a bunch of segments connected by hinges. That's how ropes are done in a game engine. It's not one continuous piece. It's one solid piece that's always straight, and then a hinge, and then another piece that's straight, and then a hinge.
That clip blew my mind. And there's a bunch of different things going on, and the most critical thing is that it all is working. That bridge is made up of several interlocking rectangles, and it looks like each of those rectangles is its own physics object, and they're able to fold up together, they're able to kind of move, kind of like a rope, and then the fact that they have, the sophistication to I got pulled taunt, and now I know that there's this tension that has to be released with this movement. There's also the lava that's underneath the bridge, which is not probably like a super detailed fluid simulation. It looks like it's probably a shader. But that bridge intersects with the lava, and you can see there's kind of ripples and other VFX that happen. Someone had to make that happen. There are so many different things interacting, the players interacting, the player being able to grab the bridge and pull it over, all of that stuff is really impressive, and it's the polish and the stability, the lack of bugs, that really makes it stand out.
If it were easy, everyone would do it. But also, everyone doesn't really need to. As special as these physics interactions are, they work for Tears of the Kingdom because the game is largely about manipulating physics objects and creating marvelous contraptions. The physics need to sing, and that's not true of every game.
Tonally, the physics in Zelda would not work with every game that you can think of. I mean, imagine The Witcher if everything was sort of constantly shooting. I mean, actually, that sounds kind of fun, but basically, game developers make choices every day of development, and most of those choices revolve around how do we get to the vision? How do we get to the experience we want the player to have?
I know in Indie Game the Movie, the Team Meat guys talked about how Super Meat Boy was basically, that entire movement system was duct tape. Everything was hard-coded. The number of seconds you stuck to a wall, nothing was dynamic. It was just hard-coded to feel as good as possible. Because when you need something to really feel good, that's where you focus your talent and your artistry on.
And I would even say, if every 3D game did have that kind of like physics gameplay, or just like if everything could just be a realistic physics object, like it would not be as fun. You don't want everything to be the same.
But another factor that went into Tears' development is time and expense. The game's producer, Eiji Aonuma, said in an interview with Gene Park that Tears of the Kingdom was functionally done in March of 2022, but they were able to delay it an entire year to keep working on it. Shayna said they would be surprised if that year weren't devoted to optimizing these physics interactions that make up so much of the game.
When we talk about polish in a game, I think when people think of like, oh, we're making the game better or we're making the game shinier, you're thinking like, oh, they're adding stuff. It's like, no, we're trying to make it smaller. We're trying to make it run faster and be more efficient.
But another problem that many developers face in the quest to put out polished games with stunning mechanics is that the people who would know best how to make those games simply aren't around anymore.
We have a real problem in this industry where there is not enough specialized senior talent to go around. We are really kneecapping ourselves by our over-reliance on contract labor in this industry. I personally, at a time, was working on a game that was expected to have about a 2 to 3 year development cycle, and I was able to hire, but I was hiring contractors, and the limit to how long we could hire them on as contractors was about 18 months. And I said to my manager, so we are going to lose these people because we're not going to hire them as full-time because apparently that's too expensive. We're going to lose these people right as we're starting to finalize this game. And I'm going to have to bring on new people and teach them how all of this works. And my manager basically said, yep, that is what we're going to have to deal with. And I was like, great, that's terrible. The way that we work, the way that we burn people out is really undercutting our future, because the games industry is only going to get bigger, and that just means there will be more studios, more content to make, more technology to develop. And if we keep burning people out when they're just starting their careers, instead of like training and educating and guiding them up into more senior roles, we're going to continue to struggle with not having enough senior people to work on these things. And we're going to make worse games. Somewhere in the mix, there is money that could be spent on hiring people for longer periods of time and giving them stability, and we just don't do it. If you want to make a quality game like Tears of the Kingdom, you need to give their people their time, and your people have to feel secure.
So when it comes to Tears of the Kingdom, the real miracle might just be that the team had time to figure all this out. They made a game with a physics system so robust that you can make Beyblades and Evas and Mad Max cars and almost anything that you can imagine.